go.
Ready? We need to call the meeting to order and start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item of business is the approval of the agenda, and I think if you've got one out of here, we have a couple items added to it. Cindy Taylor on the CVB as public comment B, and the health board resignation under Commissioners 5E. Other than that, are there any other additions or modifications?
Just a couple other public comments that signed in.
Okay, but.
Okay.
Hearing none, I accept the motion to accept the agenda as presented. I'm going to second that. What do you think? I'll second it. All those in favor? Aye. 2-0. Stan and Martha Steckler. Well,
No. No show. Okay,
All
now to the
right.
chair.
then who else do we have?
That's right.
You're good.
Chris Thornton.
Good morning. So, nowhere to stand for the camera.
This is a
Over
problem.
here,
She's
huh?
changed. This is the first round. It may move at the next meeting. Who knows?
Hey, I'm Chris Thornton. I'm the district ranger on the Hoosier National Forest. And historically, we'd come to your meetings occasionally. We kind of got away from that. So I started almost 2 years ago in this position. Just wanted to introduce myself, say hi. I give you a face to call and a name to call if you ever have comments or concerns about anything on the 60-some thousand acres of Hoosier National Forest in Perry County. And just a couple of things that are going on coming up next year. If you haven't heard of it, there's an act that Congress made called the Great American Outdoors Act. And it's a great way to deal with our recreation facilities that we already have that we're, needing some love. So they've been really nice about funding several things. A couple of years ago, it was paving at Tipsaw. Coming up, it's rehabbing the pavilions at German Ridge Beach. So a lot of those are historic CCC buildings, and they need that helping hand to be effective into the future. Also going to be looking at putting some more maintenance in the Reckenbaugh House. But just wanted to say hi, good morning, and let you know who I was. And if you have any concerns, never hesitate to reach out.
So are these like competitive grants, or are they just going to provide funding, or what's
They're competitive amongst internally in the agency. So we have to propose for the Eastern United States, and then tell our story, why we think it's important, and compete for that funding, which thankfully we've been pretty successful doing.
So the next question is, I know you don't have potable water at German Ridge,
Right.
correct? Is that an eligible project or not?
It would be. It would take a lot of coordination to get water line there and everything, but it's something that we're interested in doing in the future. One of our other campgrounds up in Monroe County is called Blackwell Horse Camp, and we're using the Great American Outdoors Act and infrastructure funding to take a water line like 6 miles back to that place. So it can be done, and it's something that we'd like to do in the future, because we spend a lot of time and money filling that cistern there, and it's only good for animals.
Right. And the thing about it is, I think it would give you opportunities to expand potentially if you could get potable water to that site.
Always something we're looking for.
Right.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Ian Hawhouse.
I'll save mine for the 4A or 5A.
Okay. Cindy Taylor.
Share the overhead here. Good morning. I sent an email back in July about the comprehensive plan that was put out in 2015. I think it was started in 2014. My thing is have y'all read it? And that was my goal, if nothing else, was that hopefully that if you had not read it, that you are reading it or have read it now. That's the main thing. In the plan, it talks about the short-term, long-term, midterm. And the midterm is here. 10 years will be next year that plan was started with the steering committee. And I don't know how far, I'm just coming from the tourism part, mainly with it. And a lot of the goals in it was the corridor between 64 and Tell City, the 37 corridor. I haven't seen nothing there. I don't know when that gas station was built, but there's so much that needs done through there. And I know the visitor center was a big thing on there. And if there was any way that we can start, I kind of went through landowners and stuff. I don't know if there's a seller, what the redevelopment or the redevelopment commission or the park and rec, anybody owns through there. Or are they all private landowners? And is there any way to, I think it started in the plan about a parking because of all the parking along the roads. 70, I know it's kind of been nipped in the bud down through 70. On Old 37, they still do quite a bit. But there is no place for commuting, parking to meet with commuting. I know Lilco uses a little bit of the park area there. There's a pull-off. Along, of course, you're not allowed to park at the state garage at all during, while they're open. I know a lot of people do afterwards. But anyway, the parking thing is a big thing, I think, is a good start. And how we can start with that, whether it's acquiring the land to make that parking, even if it's to bring in a couple EV vehicle, I know that's been mentioned out in there, for charging stations, a couple out there by the interstate would be a good start, but a parking area. But if we had that piece of land where we could future site a visitor center out there at that 79 exit, that's what I want to see. I don't know where we go. But the plan, we're at the 10-year mark. So I'm asking, as I know both are newer on the commission and wasn't here prior, Randy Cleaving was, but is there any way that a committee can be put together to get updates with this? That would be the main goal, would get that updated. I know they say that our numbers as far as peoples have went up. They actually went down if you go from 90, 2010 to now to 2020. But that is what I see this subdivision doing. So that's out of that. But anyway, how can we get this updated somewhat, see what we wanted and where we're at and where we're going at midway. I think it was a 25-year plan. That would, and I'm willing to help, but I think a committee formed there was 20, I think, on there. I could count 7 that possibly you could still pick out of the county that was on there. The kids that did it were probably 10-year graduates now. We're getting there, So, but that's what I wanted to ask was, is there any way we could get this updated out in the public more of what the goals are or what the goals were and where are we at now with it. That was my main thing. But that visitor center to me is a main goal somewhere on the CVB board. Just one person on it, but that would be a main goal to bring the people. You got 22 miles that are blank, and somewhat rather ugly. The forestry service, some public mow. The mowing is, I'm glad Steve's not here. But that's what I spent the last 3 days doing, was driving the county. Some places are totally forgotten. I know, and I'll give Steve kudos, because when I was at the camp, I'd call, and in a day or two, no matter where their tractors were, they'd mow that road for me in a heartbeat. So I know they would, but we're limited with the state with that 2 times a year and contractors. And being able to work with them, forestry service is a big one because of the ownership of so much property that we don't get advantage of from the CBD. But we're building a new motel in Tell City. Why are we not getting out there farther? That's where I vision is you've got to be able, you've got the campsites, beautiful campsites, but you've got to be able to bring people who hate camping in to the county and turn on 79. I sat for a long time on the sit right above 64, and hundreds of boats turn. And they turn right or left towards Patoka, French Lick. None turn towards Perry County. The boat docks was disheartening. Driving around to the Tell City, I said it, all of them. Down at Rome was probably the biggest, Rome and Derby being the bigger expanse, but Rome was full of boats, trucks. Derby had several. Mantle Point was dead. That's where somehow the county needs to work with the forestry department because it was ugly. You could see the mud out from the dock. So it didn't look like any boat had entered the water there at Mantle Point. So that needs, it's been mowed, but it needs more there. Whether it's picnic tables, recreation, whatever, to bring the people down to that area. Anyway, that was my main thing. Big grand opening this Thursday, the 7th, at Derby for their new boat dock. So hopefully some can make it to that, because that's a big plus for Perry County. Anyway, hope I made sense. But it is that vision for that byway of 37. Get them turning towards Derby, get them out to Rocky Point, wherever we need to get them.
Cindy, I've got a question. When you promote the activities in Perry County, do you promote them outside of the county? Because you want those people coming in.
Exactly. We have hired 2 ladders, a company that is promoting farther out into the county. It's kind of on a trial basis right now. So the goal is to see where we're at in 6 months or so and hopefully expand that.
So
So
how are they doing that? Are they doing it just with social media, or is there another way that they could, outside of the county to bring people in? That's tourism.
Right,
Bring them out of the county into the county.
exactly. We're working on that.
Because a
It's
lot
a-
of people are not on social media. Sometimes I wish I wasn't, but it's,
Right,
it's people outside of this county don't know what's here.
no, and there's nothing at that corridor at exit 79 to say, come here. I mean, there's not, you've got your little signs, but nothing that blasts, what do we offer? And when they turn off of there, they're either turning on 237, heading back out of the county, or they're coming into Tell City, which is a great thing. But everything is, and most of, and I can say that from the CVB point, from what I see,
Mhm.
it's bringing those into the Tell City area. That's where your festivals are. That's where everything. We need out. You're going to bring them ahead in, but we need them out there and then get their curiosity enough to bring them ahead in. I think a lot of people are aware of the Schweitzer Fest and, the little festivals, but there's nothing out that way, whether it's motorcycle clubs or Jeep rides, any restaurants, anybody drives to the end of the line and goes a little beyond to Schwartz's restaurant. We need that on this side of the interstate, out that way. We need somebody to go in and,
Yeah, I would think that two ladders would be one to look at and ask, say, well, how far out are you going out of the county? Instead of
Steve, do you
just
know,
in
was
county.
it, how far out the two ladders is it 100,
Promoting.
150 miles? Is it maybe a little more, 300 miles? So I'd have to get back with you on that one
Okay.
for sure, for the expanse.
Do you have something established so you can measure whether they are successful or not? I know you,
Yes, well, they give us and I had it here and I took it out before I come, because I didn't want all the bulk. But they do, they met with us in June or July and gave us a readout. To me, it's hard to understand unless you're a social media geek. Whoever just scrolls past the CVB or Pick Perry, they automatically get tagged as looking at it. Now, so it's got to be brought down. I don't remember if they told us that they could actually see who hit that button. I think so. But the biggest thing was just scrolling past it when you're flipping through, you're automatically seeing it.
at some point here, and I don't know how you establish this, but at some point, whatever they've carried out so that we get a body, a family, or somebody into the county. And I don't know how we can establish a measurability of that, but that's the true sign that they were successful because someone chose to visit. So
Right, so
that's
it's
something
getting that
and
down.
then we know that type of marketing works. That's a challenge.
Yeah, and it's new to us. We've just started that, so time will tell, hopefully. But anyway,
Thank you, Cindy.
welcome.
Okay, so we're through that. Acceptance, approval of the minutes from 8/22/23.
I make a motion to accept.
I'll second it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Chris, you're on for payroll.
Excuse me, okay, we've got 8/28 payroll in the amount of $161,401.12. Health insurance claims, $8,510.76. Life insurance, $1,474.76. Sheriff's pension, $31,293. Unemployment claims, $1,995. Approval of the claim docket, which was submitted to you guys in the amount of $295,521.87.
And Chris, we determined the 1995, the county actually doesn't pay into an unemployment fund.
Correct.
So,
And we have one, yes.
any comments, additions, questions? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
I make a motion to accept.
I'll second it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Ian Haas.
So, you guys have been contacted a while back about naming Esri Creek and Old Township. I listened in on the meeting on YouTube last time, so I can talk to maybe some of those issues that were raised. If you guys have questions now, I can just answer those directly, or I could just start talking. I guess however you guys want to do it.
Start talking.
All right. And I guess I'll kind of direct my general comments towards some of the issues that came up last time, because I imagine they're still relevant. One issue that kind of kept coming up was why Esri Creek? Why not Sprinkle Creek or other people that live there now? For one thing, there already is a Sprinkle Creek in this area less than a mile away. So I think that kind of local representation of people that already live there is already there. The Board of Geographic Names is who actually approves the name, and we'll vote on it in a committee or whatever. They actually have a policy against naming features after living people because they don't want it to get, political or people hurt feelings. I think that was also brought up last time. So they really prefer it to be more of a historical name. And I think that's really the strength of naming it Esri, is that if we look back at those maps, for the first 100 years, Esri's is mostly what lived along that creek. And if we look at some of the other stream names that go into Old Creek, we have, Sprinkle Creek, Ewing Creek, Juban Creek. You can see Sprinkles and Ewings there, but if they had a good enough claim to get a stream named after them, I think Esri's even better because they have pretty much the whole stream on either side was owned by Esri's. And the Esri's, depending on which history of the county you read, were the first people to settle in that, section of land at the kind of confluence of Old Creek and what we would call Esri Creek. Another concern was, okay, so if we do this Esri Creek, it's going to be in the minutes. There might be a paragraph in the paper. And then now they're going to be an Ian Creek and a Chris Creek and a Randy Creek. I don't think that's a strong risk because there is a good deal of legwork to actually put together the application. You need supporting materials and you need kind of a good reason. And then it goes to the feds and they glance at it first before they kind of reach back out to you guys. There's also the issue of kind of the size of the feature matters a little bit. So there's a stream that goes, through our backyard or through my parents' backyard now that doesn't show up on any maps. Like if you look at the federal maps, it's not there. So it's unlikely that anyone that just wants to name the stream going through their backyard, it's probably not even mapped and won't be considered to be named. But this stream is large enough that it shows up on all the federal maps and is the only kind of tributary to Old Creek that doesn't currently have a name other than the four I already mentioned. Esri's have a strong tie to the Branchville area. I think 1810 is the year that's commonly cited. They had a centennial reunion and a bicentennial reunion in 1910 and 2010 that made our paper, Esri's from all over the country, come to Branchville for these reunions. And so I think the family tie is there and just kind of since they're already so connected to this area, that would be kind of maybe a point of pride or something for them to feel good about, that their history in this area and their continued involvement in the area is being recognized in this way. I don't know if this came up last time, but one sticking point that I thought of kind of on the way down today, you guys approving the name to be considered by the federal commission or committee will not change the regulatory status of the stream. It's not like, okay, if we name it, now it's going to be regulated by the EPA or anything like that. Nothing as far as any regulation or ownership or anything of the stream would change. It would just be the recognition of the Esri family in essentially any federal database. Like I assume the WITH or WTH GIS, our county GIS website, currently it's listed as just like branch of Oil Creek or something like that. that's where you would see Esri Creek pop up. Any other federal maps or anyone that uses a federal database would get the name Esri Creek, but it wouldn't necessarily have to change any operations of the county or anything like that. So that's, I guess, most of my pitch. I don't know if you guys still have the materials with you, but if you had questions about anything, I'd be happy to answer it, or just other general concerns.
If we were to give you our blessings on this, how would that tie us with this as commissioners of this county? Is it required that we do this?
Okay. So it's either a monthly or quarterly meeting by this Board of Geographic Names Recommendation Committee. And so whenever they have all the materials, it goes before the committee, and they either basically give it a thumbs up or thumbs down. So the recommendation or lack thereof from the county would just be a factor that they consider in that decision. So if you guys say yes, it doesn't automatically guarantee that it would happen, but I find it hard to imagine that they would go against a county saying, we agree with it. If the county would say no, like give a response but say no, it would probably be unlikely to happen. It could still happen, but I think they would be even more likely to follow a no recommendation than a yes recommendation, because they don't want to come in on top of the local feedback if it said that they didn't.
And if we gave no recommendation, how does that impact it?
Less than a affirmative no, if that makes sense. Like it would be, it would probably be viewed disfavorably that either the county didn't approve of it but didn't want to go on record, or didn't care enough to say either way, just how they might view it. It would probably be a slight demerit, but it theoretically could still go through if there's just no response.
I know there's a lot of creeks, streams, whatever here in the county. And a lot of them have the older names, but they're not named through the county or through the state or whatever. But I'm just wondering what is going to happen if we do this, which I don't know if it's ever been done here in the county, to name a stream or give approval to name a stream to go to the state through, like what you're trying to do. What I'm wondering is what's going to stop 15 people coming in here and saying, well, I want this stream named after my family because they lived here for 100 years. I don't want to start a line of this happening.
Yeah, that's fair. I think part of the impediment to that process would be streams that already have names. I think even streams that don't necessarily have local names do have names in the federal database, which they would highly unlikely to change that name. And then, like I said, a lot of the smaller streams that only go through maybe one or two properties where a family may have a strong tie, like you said, we're a Hoosier Homestead farm. We've been there over 100 years, all that stuff. It's unlikely to show up on the called quadrangle maps that the USGS puts out. Streams that small are unlikely to show up. And then just the legwork that goes into, looking at the property records, doing the research on what names have or have not existed. The federal, I think it's already the Board of Geographic Names looks at it first before it comes to you. They can look at it initially and say, there's not really much here. And they can either ask the proponent to come up with more evidence or kind of give them the impression that it's unlikely to be approved. One thing I forgot to mention earlier is that there are records that this stream was referred to as Esri Creek in the 1800s. A local resident was a history professor at IU, and one of his books, which I brought just for fun, he mentions that it had been known as Esri Creek for over 50 years in the probably late 1800s, because the Esris have been kind of the only people that lived there.
And how are you connected with the Esris? Are you a descendant of the Esris?
Yes, distantly, but I grew up across the street from this creek, so lived on Branchville Road. When I was growing up, I said, I'm going across the road. That meant I was going to play in this creek or look for wayward arrows from the bow hunts down at the Conservation Club, things like that. So
So you're the spearheader of this, naming this creek, or?
as far as I know, I'm the only person that is involved in it. Like, I'm not coordinating with, the Esrys or anything. It's like my dad's mom was an Esri. So, I mean, it's pretty far back there. But no, I just always played in this creek. All the other creeks had names that are in this area. So I thought it would be fun to name the stream. And then I thought Esri Creek was a good name just due to the history of the area and the family.
And are you from this area?
I'm from Branchville.
Okay.
My parents still live there, and my great uncle and cousin still live along Branchville Road there, Gibsons.
Can we formulate a letter that is kind of the middle of the road? I don't know if it'll be helpful to you or not. If we say the reason that we don't want to get into the name of, or get into the act of supporting names on specific creeks or different historical areas is because of the potential of overwhelming requests, and state something like it appears that you've done your research, which you have done quite a bit of research to establish why you believe it should be named this. But something in that type so that we can not be a deterrent to you, but not necessarily come out and say name it Esri Creek, because we really don't have the right to name it. The feds are going to name it.
Right. Well,
They'll make that decision. But something that's our, I think that's more so my concern for sure, is that we don't create, I don't know that people would put as much effort into it as you did doing all the research. I think it's quite a task to support where you're at. But we could get, so we would avoid having a huge amount of people that would start wanting to name everything in the community. And I don't know whether that'd be beneficial to you or not.
So I believe on the form that was emailed to you guys initially from the Board of Geographic Names, I think it has like yes, no, other or something. So I think it could be as simple as using that form, checking other, and then as a comment, put like
a narrative in there.
we are not
concerning-
opposed to the name. It may be appropriate, but we
can be supportive of your research because it appears you've done quite a bit on it. I mean, that's the case. So,
Like you said earlier, you watched the last meeting and there were kind of opponents to this because they, Sprinkles lived there and my great grandma lived there and my great grandma's brother and sister and, and I don't want to get that battle started.
that's fair.
and see, the problem of it is, do we go to 1800, do we go to 1900, do we go to 2000? I mean, because nobody owns the ground forever. It passes through generations. And so what's the right time to pick the name out that lived on the property? And that puts us in a kind of a situation that's hard to pick sides there and something like that.
So I definitely see you're worried about kind of the slippery slope. I guess I don't see the slope being all that slippery. Acknowledging that if this is a paragraph in the paper, more attention will come to it and maybe other people will want to do it. But this process has been here for over 120 years. And if it hasn't happened yet, I think it's unlikely to become an avalanche to continue the slippery slope metaphor of people coming here trying to name the street.
It may not. What we want to do, though, is be fair with whoever the next person is that comes in with a proposal so that we're not perceived to be biased in any direction. We just want to be fair with anyone that lives here that wants to approach something similar.
I do applaud you for all your research.
Well, I think thank you. And I guess I see that as also part of not impediment, but a little bit of I don't know, roughening up the slope is just the amount of work that it does take to kind of establish a good case. I think if other people come before you with no reason other than that, they live there now, I think it would be fair to say no to that in that case.
And then what we get is, Ian was okay. He slipped right through. They must like him. They must not like me. That becomes the response. It's not the fact that you did all this research and maybe the next individual did zero. So, I mean, and then we find ourselves in that, what is required? Do you have to do 100 years of research to support your situation or 5 minutes? And now we find ourselves in a curious little situation here saying, well, here's the rules today and we'll change them maybe tomorrow. And we're trying to stay consistent with everything.
No,
And
that's fair.
That's our challenges.
I think that's fair. Anyone can look at the packet I put together. If you guys are a decision-making body, I think, not that you have to be arguing with other people or trying to compare us or whatever, but I think the record is out there. If someone comes up here and their record isn't as strong, I think that's something that you guys could say, hey, I understand your case, but hypothetically, this one was exceptionally strong, and I think we were comfortable at that point. I think the middle ground will be tricky when some are borderline. But I think that the strength of this application, the fact that it has been previously known as Esri Creek in a published history book about Indiana, gives it a little bit of a added hook that you guys can rest your hat on or lean on and say, hey, this is actually a pretty good case. Nothing against the next guy, but if it's not as strong, I think that's something you could point to as one of the determining factors.
We don't necessarily want to be the judge and jury, though. What do you think, Becky?
I think,
You won't, the judge and jury will be the feds.
Right. They're the ones going to make the decision. We're just writing a letter of support, or
I would hope so. Yeah.
that's what you're asking for, to name it.
Sure.
Cindy, come up here. We've changed our rules because everybody has questioned the voices from the audience. Yeah, that's okay.
You can stay there.
Yeah.
I don't want to stand there. No, my question is, I'm assuming you came today, I'm trying to rack my memory from the last meeting where someone came forward about this.
Mhm.
And I'm assuming you've done all the work. So someone came to come against it? Is that what I'm understanding?
They were questioning the naming. Why is it not named Sprinkle Creek?
because they
Because
had
the
sprinkle descendants.
Yeah.
Back down the line
Have
and
you
their
done a
grandma.
consensus of the area, of what the people in the area? You've done your work, obviously. So the last meeting, when they came forward, it was just opposing the name, is what I'm understanding?
I think a little pushback and then partly just wondering why it came to be, how it came to be, something like that. As far as Sprinkle Creek, this can't be Sprinkle Creek because there's already a Sprinkle Creek right down the road. As far as getting the public consensus, I think that's what this public feedback, the commissioners meeting is for. I didn't canvass the neighborhood. I know my great uncle, Dick Gibson, who lives, also right across the street. He asked, Polly Sprinkle and the other old timers that have lived there for a long time if they knew of a different name, and no one did. And then he's the one that actually found the reference to it as Esri Creek in the old book that he got from his dad. But I think that's at least so far, these meetings have been the extent of the public feedback.
Okay, I was just curious how it got here, other than you sending an email to the commissioners.
So there's a packet you can download online that you fill out with, I put some maps in there and some references. I sent it to the federal board. They review it initially, and then they send it back for local concurrence. They sent it to the commissioners and I think maybe the Historical Society. And that's where it's been for a couple months or whatever. The Fed's waiting on the local feedback and then it'll go before the final committee.
Okay, that's.
Later this
that's
year
how
or
the
whenever.
word got.
Yes, yep.
Okay, I commend you for the.
Cindy, I've got the maps here, if you wanna look
Can
at
I?
it.
Thank you.
He did
It's the packet.
quite a bit of work.
You did a lot of work.
And I guess,
Yeah.
so I live in Indy now, so I couldn't come down for the evening meeting, but came down for the morning meeting today.
I'm going out on a limb. I'm going to make a motion to approve it as Esri Creek. And the reason is if the next person comes to the commissioners and does as much work as he did to support his naming, I'll support that one also. So,
A second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 2-0.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming down and explaining
Appreciate
this.
So we need to get
So
that
we just
paperwork.
need to get that and sign it and send it in. That we support his action.
Okay.
That's all it amounts to. Next item we have up, PCDC affidavit for payment. And that's just a formality. There was work done, mitigation work done at the, I think at the Riverview West and also in Troy. And this is a requirement to approve and sign these documents because there's still bond proceeds that are available to pay for this remediation. Yeah, on both of them.
And rest.
They come in, they've got a 4 or 5 year contract to continue to oversee the, to make sure there's not erosion. in
They're on
basic plants.
contract too, correct?
Yes.
So,
And it just needs to come from the bond proceeds rather than anything else. And we have to approve that.
okay. I make a motion to approve it
Motion to approve, I'll second it.
on both of them.
Yep. All those in favor?
Aye.
2-0. The next item is an Antro brick grant. What that consists of, Antro and Troy Township want to apply for a federal grant, and it's competitive. And what it will do is put generators on pump stations they have. So when they lose power, currently there's one right out here on the highway, it feeds the hospital. And they had a power outage with Southern Indiana Power here within the last year or so that was down for a while. They're concerned about keeping water pressure up within their system. They would be eligible for this potentially. What it has to do, it has to be submitted to the state. Then if the state approves it, then it goes on to the federal government, and they will be the ultimate decision maker as to whether they supply the funds. The county is required to sign off on a grant of this type for the benefit of Antro and Troy Township. They're gonna put 2 of them in. So we just have to approve it
It's
and
a 25%.
25% match to whatever the amount is. But they're looking for generators for their pump stations is what they're looking for.
Do they have any idea what these are gonna cost?
They've priced them, but I don't think they've got their prices back yet. Some of their pump stations are set up now where you can rent a portable generator, bring it over and plug it in. But they have to make sure that one's available in the neighborhood when they need it. So, and the one down here on the highway has nothing. And that's one of the crucial ones that takes
Yeah.
Tell City water and pushes it out into the system. They have water capacity in their tanks, but when they start to lose volume, it's going to be a problem if the electricity's down for a period of time. So
So do we need to approve this?
we need to make a motion to apply for that grant in the name of Antro and Troy Township.
Make a motion.
I'll second it. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
2-0. Coroner's van.
Okay. The old coroner's van is at the annex warehouse. I went and looked at it. What I need to know is what procedure that I have to go through to get this vehicle for this use of the animal shelter because they're making anywhere from 3 to 5 transports a week out of this county with animals. And the van is just sitting there. We're paying insurance, license plates, and everything else. And it's not in bad shape. It's, I believe it would be perfect for the animal shelter. There's room in the back, a lot of room. I believe you can probably fit 4 big cages, 2 small cages in here. And that would save a lot on transportation if you had more than 2 or 3. And they are in need of the van or a van. And like I said, hasn't been started for 2 years. It will need a battery. The tires are good on it. My husband and I went and looked at it. It probably will need a tune-up, but it is sitting there and it belongs to the county. So why not? I need to know what the procedure is, Andrew, to
Do you know what the value is? Do you do a Kelley
that.
Blue
I
Book
do
or-
not.
Okay.
It is a 2006.
The
Yeah,
question is, Andrew, the county owns it, and then depending on what entity takes title to it, it may or may not be a county entity. I think
Right.
that's the-
Right. It would be,
And I know in the past, there's some requirements about putting it out for
Mhm.
bids.
Mhm.
You know, so that, but I'm not sure how this is gonna fall.
And you had to declare it surplus, but I'm not sure after that you usually just sell it. I'm not. You're wanting to just straight donate it to one entity without any competitive.
Well, I think that the first thing, Becky's got several ideas, and we've kind of got to get our details together on it. Who will have access to it, how it will actually function.
Mhm.
I think the first step is what we have to do that, because there's some talk of potentially doing something with an animal control officer and how this might all come together, and it's just discussion right now until
Right,
it kind of
and-
gets the details sorted out.
and I do want to bring it up also that the Animal Welfare and Control Board and the shelter were working together to get information to present for an animal control officer. There were I know this for a fact, there were over 500 calls to law enforcement last year.
I actually had this in the past. We took the assessor's office took an old sheriff's vehicle and used it for data collection. And basically all we had to do is just internally, who was responsible for the oil changes, the tires, and that kind of thing.
But
So
Mindy, the government owned it and you're part of the government.
This would go
This
to,
may go, the animal
the shelter.
shelter operates separate outside of it, so
it would-
that's the little quirky difference. If
They
we had it
would be a contract.
internally, it wouldn't be an issue. We could transfer it without
Yeah.
problem.
But is it not any different than if you're selling an old vehicle? Just put a value on it?
Well, like the last time we disposed of different things, is we took it out to Dixon and they just auctioned it off. That way, that's considered a fair market price for it, and whatever it brought, everybody has an opportunity to buy it. And at certain, am I correct? It's certain dollar amounts?
Yes. And the concern I have is not that you're declaring it surplus and then just selling it at a fair market value. You want to declare it surplus and put it specifically to one entity without any kind of competitive bidding process. So I'd have to look at how that could work, because it's different from an internal body like assessor or sheriff to assessor, where it's all within the county.
But
There
are
went-
county funds not operating the animal shelter?
There's a contract with the
Along
animal,
with, so how is it?
They're a contract is what it
like an
amounts to.
independent contractor.
It'd be similar, in your case, we contract with Tyler Technologies. We could not necessarily just give them a van to go out and do assessment work because they are a contractor.
Modify the contract and put it in.
Then we're gonna supply them a van and we'll probably take on the maintenance with it then the county's still hooked on it.
and as far as an animal control officer, like I was saying, there's over 500 calls last year And that our law enforcement does not need to be out here doing animal calls. And that is where an ACO needs to come in here. I mean, it's ridiculous what they have been called on. Absolutely ridiculous.
Now, Alan, were you around when they previously had an animal control officer?
I was.
Okay. As we go, and I support Becky in her ideas of getting one, but I think some of the challenges that you faced with the original one, I know there was different things. Yeah, sure. I think we need to get those that actually were around during that period so we can maybe avoid some of the other challenges that
So
followed that.
I'm working on my 30 years, and I know in the past we've had 2 or maybe 3 different ACOs come into the county to work. The challenges that were had was with good intention, but with the lack of training, and they have no power or authority. A lot of times we were called anyway. Does that make
For
sense?
citations.
Yes. Not only that, but even to get on the property, you just can't walk onto somebody's property without probable cause or things like that. So that's the only challenges that I remember that we faced. We called if we had enough probable cause, we would apply for a search warrant or something like that. We could do that. So we were there anyway. Do I think it's needed? Yeah. Do I think it would relieve some of our issues? Absolutely. But if there's any kind of law enforcement to be done, that has to be done by us unless there's a lot of obstacles for that, to get that training as well as who gives them that authority.
I do know that there is 2,
But I do appreciate you saying that. We do take a lot of calls.
there's over 500 last year.
Okay.
I do know that there's 2 places that train animal control officers, and I'm not really for sure where they're at. They're in southern Indiana somewhere. One of them is free,
Oh, really? I didn't know.
and the other one is $650. And now how extensive that they go into this, I don't know. But I think it can be done.
I agree. I
It's
agree.
just the details. The
It's the
devil's in the
There's a lot of
details.
details to that. And I don't want to see it fail. I know it failed before,
Mhm.
and this is not what I want to see it happen again.
No, I think we
And
have
it's
good
not- Well, it
staff.
wasn't for the lack of anything. It's just that, there was actually 0 teeth to go
Right.
with it.
And those are the things that I think with you and the other police forces that can come in and share some of the
Mhm.
challenges
Mhm.
so that as we work through this, we can address them.
Yeah.
With
and
some
I know that
details.
We have talked,
So-
and it's so great to have her on board.
Yes.
It would relieve us a lot. But
We have a great
I
staff.
think at the end, we're still going to be involved, because if charges need to be filed or something like that, we have to get involved anyway.
Alan, I was just thinking here off the cuff, do reserve officers have authority, law enforcement authorities? So just thinking, is that a possibility to tie, to have reserve officers on the animal
On
control?
standby.
To where, not necessarily they're serving as a reserve officer, but it kind of commingle them to
It would
them
work,
together
but
to have the reserve officers.
everyone in our
be-
reserves have full-time jobs.
Yeah.
And to do anything extra, it's who's available, who's not, and that would be an issue.
Mhm. Well, you have, and here's another just idea that rolled in my head, thinking that if each shift that there is in Tell City, county, wherever, we're having counting, is to have a couple of officers trained. They're like on night shift. I know you're gonna have more on days, more animal calls on day shift. That's the ratio that it was. But if we could have a couple of officers trained, then if they are needed to do whatever legal work that there is to do, like going on someone's property, they would be available.
And could you have another, like, create a role within the sheriff's department of animal control, that's a deputy with under your authority and would have like,
You know, we have discussed that in the past. But if I name this person in charge of animal control, what happens when they all go on vacation, their days off, sick, something like that? So what happens with those calls? You know what I mean?
just the default of what's going on right now?
Yeah. We've talked about it before. When I was at Tell City Police Department, we talked about it, and now the sheriff, we've talked about
My
it.
vision is operating as something like the coroner's department
Mhm.
operates, which is the main individual. And then he has multitude of deputies
Mhm.
that can carry out the same task. And then you can't get anybody tied down to 24/7.
No.
You know, and this way you have a group of people. And I know at one time the Humane Society had actually offered to take care of some of these challenges. So there may be opportunities within the community of people that'll step up and say,
Right.
hey, I'd be willing to do this. And
I
put me
truly
on the-
believe an animal control would help. It would relieve a lot of the initial calls, but we still have to come out. But it would be great to have that if it comes through.
It would
It
reduce.
would relieve a lot of those.
Mhm.
Now, if the animal control officer gets a call, they may have to turn around and call us, and that's fine. But there might be times they don't have to call us and they'll handle it themselves.
That's right.
And maybe there won't be charges, or charges filed or anything. So that would be absolutely wonderful if it's done right. And those people have to understand there are a lot of boundaries that you can't cross
Mhm.
to do that.
Everybody has to be trained.
Yes,
That's
Yeah.
critical.
I agree.
And like I said, I know there's 2 schools you can go to.
Mhm.
One of them's free and one of them's is $650. And I mean, that's nothing. $650 is
No.
nothing.
Go for it. I think it would be great, but I just hope it would be great for us to be involved when you do decide to move forward with the experience of me and my staff, and as well as Tell City Police Department and Cannleton. It would be very, very good to move forward.
I think all should be involved.
Yeah.
I think we should all work as.
Yes.
I'm going to make this suggestion. First, Andrew, find out, I think we're okay with the van.
I
As
don't
far
have
as
a problem
utilizing
with
it. Andrew, find out how we could make that van available to this group in some fashion.
Okay.
Molly and you're on the animal control board, and Alan and Derek and the Cannleton, and I don't know if Troy has anybody.
Yes, they do now.
Okay, but get that group together and anyone else that you know of that had knowledge of how the struggles with the old animal control officer was, and try to build a consensus that's something you all could work with, and the areas that each one would want to take on as far as challenges and how you might envision this, and then we can come back and see how we could put it together. So
Okay.
whoever wants to,
Doing
Yeah,
the
yeah.
van to the animal control would be part of the county instead of
Potentially.
going to River's Edge, because animal control is actually a budgeted
If-
It would
fund.
be county employees.
if we do that,
And
then
if I
we may
remember-
just leave the van in the county's
That's what I'm
name.
saying, yeah.
If I
See if
do
we did that.
remember, if you name an animal control in the past, it was always a question of who was actually in charge of that.
So that's something you need to hammer out, and you need to have
Yeah.
somebody that's in charge.
Yeah.
That's just,
Who they answer to.
Yeah, the answer to it.
yeah.
And in my opinion, they should answer to the animal control board.
Yes.
I don't see why they wouldn't. They don't need to answer to Molly.
But who are they employed by?
They don't need to answer to us. They're employed by the county.
Okay.
And the animal control board is the county.
Yeah.
So,
You're on your path.
Yep.
I
Just
think
let me
you're
know.
probably right. Thanks, Alan.
Thank you.
So are you going to take that challenge on? Get them organized and get started? Thank you. And Andrew, find out what kind of
I guess I am.
peculiarities that we'll have to do something with the van.
Okay.
Last item we have on here is the health board resignation, so we need to advertise that.
Thanks.
So that we have one opening. A gentleman moved to Florida and took a new job, so he no longer can serve.
So taking applications for 6 weeks.
Mhm.
Yep.
Would put it at the next
Middle of
meeting.
October.
1, 2, 3. So it would be the November 6th meeting.
That far out.
Really? Well, because we got the 19th. That's too early. October 19th and then November 6th, if I'm
What
thinking
days,
right.
what? Okay, depending on when you get it advertised.
Okay, so it'll be on the applications will be accepted until November 6th.
Is that our meeting?
I think so.
You want to cut them off that Friday?
Friday, yeah. So it'll be till November 3rd.
That's the end of the agenda. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion.
I'll second it. All those in favor?
Aye.
2-0. Thank you for attending.